Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we are discussing the Hamilton 2020 musical, the movie, music, lyrics, book, all by the mastermind Lin Manuel Miranda. You might well know Lin Manuel Miranda best from obviously Hamilton, but he's also notable work is from In the Heights and also worked on songs on Moana in 2016. He's also contributed to music in the Star Wars Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, so he's been kind of taken under the Disney umbrella. Before then, he was on television a little bit on the Electric Company, '09 and 2010, and Do No Harm on NBC, which was 2013. So, Hamilton, what can I say that has not already been said? Well, for the people in the back, the people that were just like me, that were kind of holding this in high regards, they wanted to see it on Broadway, but due to COVID-19, unfortunately, Broadway has been shut down. Off Broadway, on Broadway, all Broadway, shut it all down. So it's like, okay, Disney decided to bid on the play, or on the musical, the actual, it's like a visual capturing of the musical. Not exactly, it's like a hybrid between having like a movie and having like a theatrical theater performance, somewhere in between. I think it's for the most part, from a technical standpoint, really well done. Now, what really brings Hamilton the musical to the forefront is first and foremost the fact that they decide to tell the story of the forefathers, specifically Alexander Hamilton, with people of color. Now, that's, somewhat revolutionary. I'll say Slash Filmcast has a great little a synopsis of how this is related to how Hamilton is revolutionary in the same way that Shakespeare was. Jeff Kanata on there, I believe, talks about how Shakespeare used contemporary music of his time. So they were using simple rhymes and stuff like that, but telling old history. And similar to that, that's how we're doing it in Hamilton. Hamilton is using contemporary, let's just say 50 flavors of hip hop and other types of contemporary music to tell the story of the forefathers. Lin Manuel Miranda is playing the titular character Hamilton. Now, me not being a big musical film buff, musical film buff. Well, I guess like a musical film buff, sort of, because this is an actual live theater performance. It's not like something that's captured in the style of like a Cats or anything like that. Nothing like in that style. This is strictly live performances, and then what they're doing is they're taking 3 nights of performances and editing them together to make the actual play or musical. Sorry. So this was directed, produced by Thomas Cale, and produced, written, and composed by Lin Manuel Miranda. He has a style that is unlike any other I've heard. Right off the bat, as soon as the logo hits with the it automatically has like a sense of a beat and a rhythm. And it was something that I was not expecting for this 2 hours and 40 minutes of this a musical. Now that's kind of substantial if you think about it from the style of like a movie. 2 hours and 30 minutes, you're like, hey, that's a little hefty. But let me tell you, once you are engrossed in this first half of this, it's kind of divided in half. The first half, you're gonna be like, I believe I'm gonna have to keep on going, because at first I was like 2.5 hours. I'm gonna have to divide this in 2 nights. This is a lot to handle at the intermission. But let me tell you, by the intermission, I just couldn't take any more. I was like, give it to me more. Give it to me more. So, this stars Obviously, Lin Manuel Miranda as the first Treasury Secretary, founding father Alexander Hamilton, alongside the cast: Daveed Diggs, Renee Else Goldsberry, Jonathan Groff, Christopher Jackson, Jasmine Cephas Jones, Leslie Odom Jr., Akrit Anuwadon. Sorry if I said that wrong or mispronounced it. Anthony Ramos, Philip Asso, and among many other individuals. Cinematography by Declan Quinn, edited by Jonah Moran. I have heard some backlash just a little bit on how the editing is of this musical. Personally, it doesn't bother me. I know that from experience, it's difficult to shoot a musical. It's a combination of trying to capture the background life as well as capturing what's happening in the forefront. And so it's like, what do you think? You have to kind of navigate what do you think is important to the audience to see. For the most part, I think that this movie does a spectacular job. And it's the music, it's the rhythm, it's the acting, it's all of these things that are bringing everything. It's the story of the Alexander Hamilton coming to life. It's a little bit binary in a way. Oh, sorry, it's a little bit, sorry, not binary. It's a little bit biased by saying he was kind of this, this mixed founding father figure, but ultimately he didn't have that many things that were negative said against him, or even against the U.S. governmental system. Most of the things are glorifying the founding fathers in this film. Now, let me just go real quick by the pros. Pros: the story, the music, the composition, the casting, the colors, the lights, the attire, the detailed history. There, apparently, this has got like more words than any other play has ever said in a certain amount of time or something like that. Just by the rapping. Now, every single second of this 2.5 hours. It's every bit of 2.5 hours is in some sort of lyrical rap form, and it has some sort of rhythmic beat that is just absolutely timeless. Now, I can't tell you or even name all of the different types of styles that they named from, but I mean, all of the styles that I would name would be from the last 20 years, and so if you're listening to this and you're like 40, 50, 60, and you're like, who am I thinking about? uh, uh, Double Toasted's review of Hamilton gives a very detailed list of the types of music that this is taking from. I think they said something like Grandmaster Flash. They talked about Bone, kind of like a Bone Thugs and Harmony kind of uh, style. When I think of more contemporary style music and something that people are thinking about more of my age, maybe I would say like these guys are rapping anywhere from what uh, the Weeknd has, anywhere to Eminem, anywhere to Biggie, to Tupac. They have all these different lyrical styles and types of beats. Even where to something like Destiny's Child, to like TLC. There's just so many different types of I don't know. Types of rhythmic beats that they're using throughout this musical that make it that much better, and it keeps you on your toes and never bored. I don't think I was ever bored during this. I will say the only cons that I really had regarding any of this regarding any of the movie were if you were not watching this alongside with captions, like subtitles and stuff like that, then there was about a 90% chance you had no idea what was going on in a good couple scenes because the rapping was so fast. Now, there's nothing wrong with rapping fast, but when you're telling a story to that degree, it was like, whoa, that was a lot to handle. It's like, first I gotta get it, then I gotta go with it, I gotta. He's like rapping like freaking Busta Rhymes in some of this, and I can't really think of anyone faster than that at this point. But I mean, he was literally giving a detailed history of like American politics all through lyrical form, and absolutely musted it freaking out of the park. I gotta say, just watch the trailer for this. If you think the trailer is even a little bit, interesting when it comes to the lyrics, and not just the lyrics, but like the music, go ahead and sign up for your Disney Plus. Go ahead, at least get your free trial. I mean, this is at least worth the free trial, in my opinion. So, was saying that I absolutely really enjoyed this Hamilton experience. I will say it was probably, I think I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. Going out of it the first time, I probably would have given it a 9 out of 10, but after thinking about it, some of the the cons were starting to weigh on me a little bit more. I will say that without going into spoilers yet, if you don't already know what happens in the Alexander Hamilton story, then I will give a little spoiler bumper to say, what happens kind of at the end of this story and how they address it. I will say the way that they address slavery and people of color in this Hamilton, musical, I feel like is a little soft. It's a little underhanded, and they kind of do glorify the founding fathers in a way that are how I remember in my school a little bit. What I'm hearing in the grapevine is that this is a product of the Obama era, and it's not so much a product of the 2020 era, or even 2018 era, like, or since the Trump administration has taken hold. I feel like people have become much more vocal about um, giving recognition to black communities, and how and not just the black community, but like all people of color, how America was founded very much on the backs of the people of color, and they get next to none of the credit. And so I kind of feel like, in a way, that this does not exactly bode that feeling. Now, I've heard Lin Manuel Miranda say, he's totally open to criticism, and he understands that it's obviously he's not going back and adding things to it or anything like that. It just makes me think that he's going to be a little bit more mindful when talking about the expression of people, and people of color, women, and minorities, how they've been kind of stepped on. And yes, this is absolutely revolutionary in a way that they have people of color on all of the as all of the cast, but I still feel like they're kind of it still felt weird to just give like a big old salute to George Washington, and not think twice about the fact that he had slaves and stuff like that. And so there's just there I'm not going to ignore that there are a few lines about I think during the rap battles that were some of the best scenes, in my opinion. They did talk a little bit about slavery, but not to the extent that I think that they need to be hitting. Now, it's not like that's like a complete dig at the movie. It's just something you're like, wait a second, this it's kind of it's something that just comes to my attention. Now, with saying that, the cast absolutely outdid themselves. I can't even talk right now. With let me see, anything else we got to cover. Let me just run down the cast a little bit before we go into the spoilers. Lin Manuel Miranda, loved him in Moana and saw him on in Hamilton. Obviously, he's apparently in Mary Poppins as well. Philippa So as Eliza, his wife. I was pretty blown away by her performance, and wow, she's young. She's 30 years old. Wow, she's very young. She was also in Moana a little bit. Leslie Odom Jr., fantastic. He was in Murder on the Orient Express 2017 and Red Tails 2012. Renee Else Goldsberry plays Angelica. I loved her voice. She is one of my favorites. And apparently she was in a couple of just like, looks like Steven Soderbergh movie, Pistol Whipped in 2008, and The House with the Clock on the Walls 2018. Yeah, she hasn't really been in too much. Altered Carbon, I didn't really watch that too much, but I really loved her voice. I want to hear her in more stuff. Yeah, I don't really see too much. Oh, she was in The Get Down. I know that was a musical as well on Netflix. Let's see what else we got. Davy Diggs, I remember him in Blind Spotting. I told everybody go check this out. Blind Spotting was one of my favorite movies in 2018, and it's kind of in the same style of this musical. You know, it's kind of like it's not exactly, it's not live, obviously, um, but it's shot in a way that feels like you're kind of in a musical, and they have this like lyrical flow to it and this beat rhythm that really is oh, and it has Jasmine Cephas Jones in it. Oh, wow. So it was a stellar cast. Jonathan Groff. This is one of the last people I want to talk about real quick. Um, Jasmine Cephas Jones, obviously great. Chris Jackson. I think he was pretty good as George Washington. A couple times I thought he was probably not the right individual to play George Washington, but that was just me personally. I don't know. Jonathan Groff. He is, everyone knows him as Kristoff in Frozen and in Frozen 2. He's also Holden Ford, one of the main detectives in uh, Mindhunter on Netflix. Jonathan Groff. I would have never guessed this guy had this kind of voice just watching him on off of Netflix's Mindhunter. That was the show that I was originally introduced to him from, and I was just like, wow, this dude has a voice. He's magnetic. He's got saliva coming. He's just like foaming out of his mouth with this performance, and it is gripping. I want to see more of this guy as some sort of like king character. Wow, he's gonna play something else. I guarantee. In that he just plays kind of particular in a way that is still charismatic to watch. And then the ensemble cast, yeah, the the cast in the back that's dancing. The problem I would say only with the editing is that it took away from what was going on in the background of the dancers. The dancers felt like they were kind of third to what was actually going on. It was like the first thing we had to focus on was the main characters. The second was where the camera was focusing, and then the third was the actual set. And the set felt like at some points that I easily could have seen myself watching another version of this Hamilton show, just stag camera, just one single camera, and I would not be opposed to it. It would be interesting if they would allow that. I almost guarantee they won't, but just because the options of watching different versions of this would be very interesting. But yeah, so anything else? We're about to hop into spoilers. Just like one or two things about spoilers. If you don't know any of the story of Alexander Hamilton, I'm just gonna go over that real quick. Basically, he had a really kind of rough upbringing. This is spoiler section, by the way. Mother died real young. He came over to what's it called, states and whatnot. Yeah, I'm not gonna do a full recap on this dude, but essentially, he had a very particular, he was a little promiscuous in his life, having many different uh, women. Some of them were married. Some of them he got in trouble with. Some of them he had to pay off. So the husbands were trying to blackmail him and stuff like that. But he also was a very influential character that we find out in this play. Now, this play is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So the thing is, this is going to have a rewatch value or a replay value of very high. First of all, you want to listen to the music again just to hear it, but also because of the story that they're telling. It is an amazing story that they have uh, on Alexander Hamilton, just making him one of the most fascinating characters that seems to be kind of one of the forgotten forefathers. So, needless to say, Hamilton had a very interesting life. He was very influential in government, founding the tariffs, the controversial whiskey tax and stuff like that. His views were opposed. This is all Wikipedia. His views were became the basis for the Federalist Party, which was opposed to the Democratic Republic Party led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. So it was basically Hamilton versus Jefferson and Madison for much of it, but it was very interesting to see the different ways that they wanted to kind of run the government. And this is a hip hop musical version of that, the telling of the story. And what I hear is, for the most part, it's relatively true. Now, there are probably some parts that are a little bit, left and right, that are not exactly detailed up, of what exactly happened. But and like I said, he came over from Britain, I believe. Um, and yeah, he was a fascinating character to watch on this musical, and I can't really say too much more than that. There's this. Let me see. I have my notes right here. It's definitely something that you're gonna want to watch twice, mostly because of the story and the music. I mean, it's just something that honestly I could put on the background and listen to, just because of how catchy the majority of it is. Watch and listen on the biggest, loudest system you have. Um, there's a gasp at the end, by his wife at the end of the musical, um, as well as kind of like this wrap up of what happened with all of with all of the main characters. And we do find out a substantial amount about like the orphanage stuff that was eventually created, by her, and all of the amazing things that she contributed to, Eliza Hamilton did, as well as kind of giving some sympathetic backstory a little bit to Aaron Burr. Just not exactly backstory, but kind of maybe just kind of looking at the other side a little bit, and as well as Thomas Jefferson's character, and what was it? I believe it was the sisters that were singing as well. But anyways, needless to say, this was one of the most amazing musicals I've ever seen. Not that I've seen tons. And what everyone has said is absolutely true. Go see this. Go watch this. Find it on Disney Plus at this moment. Unless you've already seen it on Broadway, and you're just one of those lucky motherfuckers. I was just like, damn you, damn you, damn you. Every time I hear someone that got to see this live, especially with the original cast, like, I would be so pumped to go see this. So when I hear that the tickets were like, $1,000, $2,000 for a single seat, I'm like, oh my Lanta. But when you got to see this live, you were like, yes, it absolutely is. Which is kind of interesting, considering the entire cast is people of color, and I almost guarantee you that the majority of the people that were in the seats that cost that on Broadway were not people of color. They were the rich, white, wealthy. But I guess that's just the irony in this. I don't know. Maybe that's why I find it interesting and find it important to have it released on like something like Disney Plus for people to find it more accessible. What do we have? Anything else? I think that's about it for the Hamilton review. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching LuckyDog Podcast, the Hamilton review. If there are anything I have to fix up on the detailed where's my mind? What's going on? If there's any corrections I need to make, I will make them probably in the description, and or add them to the end of the podcast on SoundCloud, where the final podcast will be uploaded. If you're listening on YouTube, you probably got the majority of the podcast. If I wanted to add a little something more, I normally add on SoundCloud, so it's always good to be subscribed to both. If you want this podcast early, like I said, we always drop it on YouTube first. If you want this entire podcast, then you go on SoundCloud. So there you go. Stay up to date. Stay up to date on the social medias. Thank you for supporting, watching LuckyDog Podcast. Let me know what you thought about the Hamilton review, how it can improve, what you thought about Hamilton the musical. Like, did you like it? I've heard like there's like 99% of people love this thing, and then there's that 1% of people like, man, this is a bunch of baloney. And I'm like, yeah, well, you can take that baloney, throw it on a sandwich, and get, because I think this is an amazing feature, and yeah, it's one for the books. It's the same type of feeling I felt when I watched Parasite last year. This is without a doubt my favorite movie this year, and given that COVID kind of has us all in this funky space, hopefully you get to see, if you're listening to this review, hopefully it's not COVID times anymore, and you're out there able to find Hamilton on Broadway or something like that. But I could definitely see this going back to Broadway again and off Broadway and touring. I just want to see it. That's all I gotta say. But thank you for listening, watching LuckyDog Podcast. Daties. I bet you wanted me to rap in this, didn't you? No, I already messed up. See, that's what.